Welcome back to The Truth is Viral. My name is Bob Powell, and with me today is my good friend George Snedden. And I call him my friend because we like to do a lot of the same stuff. George and I, neither one of us have a lot of disposable income, so in order to give back to the community, we like to donate our time, our talents, and our services to local charities. And today we're at the Alpena Band Shell with the Alpena Bikers Coalition and Friends Together to raise money for this wonderful organization that provides services and counseling to people that are going through cancer, the patients and their families too. I personally took advantage of their services last year when my wife and my mother had colorectal and liver cancer and died from it. And without them, I don't think, it just would have been a lot harder. They're some really wonderful people, and they raised, $120,000 today so far? $123,000. And, the last time that we got together was back in February for the Polar Plunge, which is part of the law enforcement torch run, and we raised money for Special Olympics.
Yeah, awesome.
And, it was great because we were able to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. I was able to fulfill the request of a lot of trolls that asked me to jump in the lake. And by jumping in the lake, I was able to cross an item off of my bucket list because it was something that I'd never done. And we raised several $1,000s for Special Olympics in Michigan. So we did a pretty good job of that.
Awesome.
And George, you do this a lot more than I do. So what's your main motivation for giving of yourself to charity?
Well, like for Friends Together, I do it for because my mom has cancer. This is her second time having it. She was cured for the first 11 years, and then it came back. Cool. That's tearjerker for me right there. But just it's like I was always taught by my mom to have good morals and to help the people that's unfortunate. I've been in poverty. I've been where a lot of people have been where I was. And it's just, to me, I've been in this Polar Plunge. I was in special ed my entire life. And it's just something that I can give back to the community that makes me feel special and that I know I've done something to at least help out and just be there for somebody that needs help.
Yeah, that's awesome. So folks, you don't have to have money to give back. If you've got a talent, if you've got time, volunteer, donate. Donate your time, donate yourself. And that's... Nobody can ask any more of you. But now we're going to get to this episode of The Truth is Viral. We're going to talk to Patrick Heron because Patrick Heron wrote the book, The New World Order, or The Rise of the Antichrist and the New World Order. And in it, he's talking about how New York City is the whore of Babylon.
Places you don't talk about at parties. You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall.
Keep this frequency clear.
And now it's conspiracy. See, they've made that something that should not be even entertained for a minute. That powerful people might get together and have a plan. Doesn't happen. You're a kook. You're a conspiracy buff.
You're watching The Truth is Viral, the only news program on the internet trusted to deliver the truth since 2008. And now, here's your host, Mr. Bobby Powell.
New York City is the financial capital of the world. And to many people around the globe, it represents America itself. 2 of the most horrific terrorist attacks in this nation's history were directed at the World Trade Center, and it was eventually brought down by Islamic terrorists. In 1973, Pastor David Wilkerson told us of a vision that he had in which he saw New York City engulfed in flames. And in this episode of The Truth is Viral, author Patrick Heron, who wrote the book Rise of the Antichrist and the New World Order, is going to tell us, using the books of Daniel, Jeremiah, and Revelation, why he believes that New York City is the whore of Babylon, and why the Bible says it will be judged within the space of 1 hour. And without further ado, let's get right to this interview with Patrick Heron. Patrick, thank you very much for agreeing to be on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Bobby, for having me on.
Now, as far as the return of the Jews to Israel, obviously that is a sign that cannot be denied. It was prophesied by Isaiah, 3,500 years ago. But the rest of it, the skeptic in me has to ask, wars and rumors of wars and pestilence. I mean, the bubonic plague comes to mind, and World War I and World War II. The Peloponnesian War. There have always been wars and diseases. What makes this time in history special?
What I would say makes it different, Bobby, is the fact that World War I, you mentioned, happened less than 100 years ago, 90 odd years ago. And there was 20 or 30 million people killed in that war. Now that had exceeded any other war prior to that. Sure, you got a lot of wars before. I mean, when you spoke about the return of the prophecy about the return of the Jews to Israel, when Titus went in and 70 AD and sacked Jerusalem, he slaughtered about 1 million Jews back then, and the rest of them were scattered all over the face of the world, hence the wandering Jew. That was to fulfill a prophecy that said the Jews would be scattered all over the world. Everywhere they go, they would be despised and persecuted and hated, and that's exactly what happened to them. And that, I think Ireland is one of the few countries that a Jew was never killed in. If you go back and look at the history of everywhere they went, they've been persecuted and murdered and absolutely hated everywhere. And of course that culminated in the Holocaust when millions of them were killed. But many other prophecies that said the Jews must be restored to Israel and Palestine, and that God would bring them back there. In fact, one of the prophecies said that this would happen in one day. And in one day back in 1948 in May, the Americans went in with a proposal into the UN that Israel be made a nation state again and have its own flag and have its own country and its own government. It was backed up by the Brits, and in one day literally they became a nation state. Now there's 6.5 million of them there. But the point was, there was 1 million, there's often been maybe 1 million people killed in a war, but 30 million, that was the Great War, and they said the war to beat all wars, and they said this must never happen again. And then 30 years later they came and they started the Second World War, and there was up to 60 million, perhaps 70 million people killed in that. Now you throw that in with what's happened with Stalin in Russia, with Pol Pot in Cambodia, with Mao Zedong, then I'm saying that in the last 90 years or so, the amount of millions and millions of people that have been killed in wars far outweighs any other time in history. You put that together with all the rest of the stuff that's going on, not to mention a lot of the new revelation that's coming out now about the return of the fallen angels, which is what I write about in my new book, Return of the Antichrist and the New World Order, and all the UFOs and alien abductions and sightings and all this other stuff, not to mention what's going on in Hollywood and all the movies that's coming out of there. Then I would say that we are definitely in the last days. Whether that's this year, next year, or 10 years or 20 years, I do not know.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question. I saw one of your videos on New York City, and you compared that city to the Whore of Babylon. It's a very interesting theory, and the way you laid it out, it sure does fit. Can you talk about that for just a minute?
Okay, well, as I said, my recent book is called Return of the Antichrist and the New World Order, and it's all about this man who's coming called the Antichrist, and his various nefarious activities when he does come back to Earth. Also, I show in my book what his name is, where he comes from, where he is at present, when he will arrive on the world scene, and also his ultimate demise and his future eternal demise, or where he's going to end up in, which is not a very nice place. And it's because we're in the end times now. At the end of the book of Daniel, Bobby, Gabriel was talking to Daniel, or Daniel was talking to Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, who dictated the book to him. And Daniel asked Gabriel, he said, what do these prophecies mean and when shall they come to pass? Because a lot of the book of Daniel are parallel prophecies with the book of Revelation. Right. And Gabriel said to Daniel, he more or less told him to mind his own business. He said, the prophecies are sealed up until the time of the end. And he said, in the end times, knowledge shall be increased and many will run to and fro. So that knowledge being increased, I believe, is not just a technological knowledge or scientific knowledge, which we've had an explosion of in the last 100 years or so, to the point where I can talk to you live now from Dublin, Ireland. and you're over there in Wisconsin. It's incredible. All right, smartphones, I can talk to my kids and see their faces. Huge increase in knowledge. But I believe it's also a knowledge in the Word of God and in these secrets and mysteries that have been disguised and hidden by God, which are a lot of them hidden in plain sight in the book of Revelation. So that's why this place is coming out now. So in the 17th and 18th chapter of the book of Revelation, it says, "And he, the angel, said unto me, the waters which you saw, where the whore or the harlot sits, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the woman which you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth." Okay, so in other words, it tells you exactly what the woman is. It says that woman you saw is a great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. 5 times in Revelation 17 and 18 we're told that this prostitute, the whore of Babylon, the harlot, the great woman that he says is a great city. Okay, so if people says that it's the Roman Catholic Church, they're wrong. Or if they say it's a Muslim empire, they are wrong. Or if they say that it's several cities or countries out in Eastern Europe or in the Arab world, they are wrong, because 5 times we're told it is a great city. Okay, so when it says, "On the woman which you saw is a great city which reigns over the kings of the world," if you turn that around, it means that the Antichrist and his prime ministers or his generals are going to reign from this great city. Anyway, we'll go on and I'll give you some more clues about this great city. It says, "And he, the angel, cried with a loud voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean bird." And then it says, "And the 10 horns," this again is talking about the 10 rulers who are going to reign with the Antichrist, "which you saw upon the beast, these shall hate the prostitute, which is the city, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire." Now this is talking about the end of the time of the apocalypse, when this great city is going to be burnt with fire. Again, this is the future. I believe this is in the time of the of Armageddon, but I have to point that out, because talking about these 10 rulers, it says when it's burnt with fire, it talks about the great merchants and kings of the earth. When they see this great city burning, it says, and this is in Revelation 18, "standing afar off for fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. The merchants which were made rich by her," that's another clue, "shall stand afar off for fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city?" And it goes on, it says, "The merchants of the earth, which waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies," there's another hint, "and abundance of her delicacies means her excessive luxuries, and the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buys their merchandise anymore." And it gives a list of everything you can buy in this great city. It says gold, silver, precious stone, pearls, fine linen, purple, silk, scarlet, high wood, all manner of vessels of ivory, precious wood, brass, marble, etc., etc. And it says, "The merchants of these things, which were made rich by her, shall stand afar off, saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, for in 1 hour is so great riches come to naught." And it says, "And every shipmaster," there's another clue, "and all the company of ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships on the sea, by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour she is made desolate." Now this great city, in other words, it's a huge trading city. The reason it gives us a whole list of goods is that's what it's telling us there. I believe the clue is saying is you can buy anything in this great city. And we go back to Jeremiah chapter 49 and 50 for these prophecies. Now these prophecies in Jeremiah chapter 49 and 50 are also speaking about this great city. And not only this great city, but also not only Babylon, but the land of the Babylonians. So now it's talking about the city and the country that this city is in. Now we know that Jeremiah is talking about the same time of the apocalypse, Bobby, because 8 times in these
2 chapters, it talks about it is the day of the Lord's vengeance, the day of vengeance, the day of the Lord, the day of his cruel wrath, Christ's day, that day, the day of his cruel anger. All these are expressions referring to the day of wrath or the day of the Lord, which we call the Great Tribulation or the time of the Apocalypse, the 7 years of Great Tribulation, or 3.5 years, whichever it is, I'm not totally sure. So we go on and we get some of the clues from Jeremiah, and this one is Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 1, and it says, "This is the word of the Lord spoke through Jeremiah the prophet concerning Babylon and the land of the Babylonians." And he says, "Even if Babylon reaches the sky and fortifies her lofty strongholds, I will send destroyers against her, declares the Lord." So this city reaches the sky and fortifies her lofty strongholds. He goes on in verse 15, "She surrenders, her towers fall, her walls are torn down, since this is the vengeance of the Lord." And again, this is referring to the time where it's going to be attacked and burned with fire. And it says, "Before your eyes I will repay Babylon and all who live in Babylonia." So this place, and you know, it says several times that this city is going to be drenched in the blood of the saints and the blood of the prophets and martyrs and the blood of the people of the land. And she's going to Babylon is going to be repaid, and all who live in Babylonia. So there's a number of clues I've covered in there, and I'm going to give them all to you now, to your listeners, and then they can decide what city they think it is. So let us summarize all these hints thus far. Number 1, the implication is that this great city is a sea trading city with a great harbour. 2, everything is for sale that anyone could ever want to buy in this great city. 3, it is the financial centre for world trade and commerce. 4, businessmen, merchants, bankers have made vast fortunes by trading with this city. 5, this city has a multicultural population drawn from all corners of the globe. 6, this city has high towers and lofty strongholds that reach to the sky. 7, the headquarters of the government of the Antichrist will rule from its headquarters or its offices in this wealthy city. 8, this city is described as the mother of prostitutes and has a golden cup in her hand, and she sits by many waters. 9, this city and country has excessive luxuries and vast riches. In other words, this country and the people in this country are probably the richest people that ever lived in the history of the world. 10, this city is evil, and all manner of sin and godlessness will operate there. So there basically are the 10 clues, and I think you and most other people can probably come to the same conclusion, Bobby, as to what this city is talking about.
I'm Pete Santilli, and you're watching The Truth is Viral.
Do not click away. We'll be back with more in just a moment.
The Truth is Viral depends on your donations to stay on the air. Specifically, as I publish this, I'm raising funds to go to Cleveland so that I can cover the Republican National Convention, in which Donald Trump is going to be crowned the party candidate for the Republican Party. If you've been watching the news, you've seen all kinds of violence from Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton supporters, obviously, and it's been proven they've been funded by George Soros, and it's going to be a violent time. I can pretty much guarantee that. So please go to bobpowell.blogspot.com, hit the PayPal button on the right, and donate whatever you can to get me down to Cleveland so that I can cover this and you can see live exactly what's going on. I will bring you coverage that the mainstream media won't dare to show you. But I need your help to do it. You guys know me, I don't raise money just for the heck of it. Every cent that you send in goes to buy equipment or some type of expenses for The Truth is Viral. I don't need any money. I've got everything that I need. What I do need to keep TTIV going is your help, your donations, and most of all, keep us covered in your prayers, folks.
The New World Order and the leaders of our world today in the EU, in Russia, in China, and in America, and all these people who want to bring in a New World Order and talk about a one world government, they always talk about the United Nations
as being the vehicle whereby they want to utilize in order to bring about this great new world order and one world government. And the headquarters of the United Nations is in New York City.
When he was having his visions, when he was shown these visions on the Isle of Patmos, he saw lightning, and he heard thunder and rumbling, and felt earthquakes. Now, can you describe what that really is in 21st century terms?
Absolutely. This happens at the end of the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, and the 7 vials. It talks about a huge army from the east, numbering 200 million, are going to wipe out about a third of the population of the earth in their march westward towards this valley in northern Israel called the Valley of Megiddo. And when they get there, the Antichrist plus a huge military power from the west are there already, and there's a sort of a Mexican standoff between these huge military powers. Now this is at the end. We're cutting to the end of the book of Revelation here, to the Valley of Megiddo. In ancient times, the Valley of Megiddo was always a valley that anybody coming from Europe and the east, if they wanted to go to China or India, they would have to pass through this valley because of the mountains running north and south. It's about 30 miles long, about 10 miles wide. Anybody coming from the Far East and wanting to go to Europe and to the west would have to funnel through this valley. So it talks about this huge army from both sides meeting in this Valley of Megiddo. Then I believe there's a sort of a Mexican standoff. It talks about silence in heaven for a half an hour, and then John said what he saw was flashes of lightning, peals of thunder, rumblings, and a huge earthquake. And he said no earthquake was like this that was ever seen in the world before. And he said all the cities of the nations fell down. Now, but I believe what John was describing there was a nuclear strike, because he said he saw flashes of lightning similar to the flashes of lightning we saw, for instance, when they were going into Iraq, and missiles firing at night like flashes of lightning as all these missiles and bombs were shot off and fired into the night sky. It said he saw lightning. Again, if you're standing near these huge missiles when they're shooting off, it's like lightning. He heard rumblings. The rumblings were the explosions in the distance when he heard these bombs going off. Boom, boom, boom. And he said peals of thunder. Again, I believe you're a military man. If you're standing anywhere near these huge rockets and missiles, when they're being fired off, they're like cracks of lightning in your ear, banging off all over the place. So when he saw flashes of lightnings, he heard peals of flashes of lightning, peals of thunder, rumblings, and a severe earthquake. And he said no earthquake was ever like this in the whole world before. And he said all the cities of the nations fell down. Now, the word nuclear strike were not in John's vocabulary. John was probably in his 90s when he got this vision of the on the Isle of Patmos, when he wrote the book of Revelation. He could only describe things in terms of his own understanding and his own vocabulary. So when he saw flashes of lightning, peals of thunder, rumblings, and thunders, he was describing a nuclear strike. And the one that seals it for me, Bobby, is the fact that he said all the cities of the nations fell down. Now, brother, let me tell you, there's only one thing that's going to make all the cities of the nations fall down at the same time, and that is a nuclear strike. And that's why I read earlier describing the great prostitute, the great city, the whore of Babylon, New York City. It's going to be burned on fire, and in 1 hour, it's going to receive huge destruction.
I'd like to remind everybody, though, to go to bobpowell.blogspot.com, hit the PayPal button on the right-hand side of the page, and leave me a donation so that I can get down to the Republican National Convention in Ohio and bring you coverage that the mainstream media won't dare to give you. I will be down there in the trenches, folks, where the metal meets the meat. I'm going to see if I can trigger some of these George Soros-funded protesters. Actually, they're not protesters. They're just call them what they are. They're rioters. They're violent people, and I've got some experience with them. Check this link out, and you'll see how I dealt with them last time. Let's see how I deal with them in Cleveland in July 27th. If you want to burn this flag, you're going to have to take it from me. Thank you for watching The Truth is Viral. My name is Bob Powell, and as always, God bless, Semper Fi, and hoorah.
Thank you for watching The Truth is Viral with your host, Bobby Powell. Make sure to follow The Apocalypse on Twitter at The Truth Is Viral. Like The Truth Is Viral on Facebook, and if you can, please remember to donate to the cause via PayPal at www.bobpowell.blogspot.com.
Smack runner.